talk about love, right? That was the goal.
Why not? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to leave the ball in your court then. So I'm going to count to three and then I'm going to hit record.
Okay, excellent.
1, 2, 3.
All right. It's so great to see you, Karen. I almost thought about reading the letter I sent you because I actually got a comment on one of your videos the video I posted with you. And I was like, yeah, I was just thinking about Karen and people are thinking about Karen. So I wanted to reach out and yeah, I just had such a lovely time learning about art with you and talking about ideas. And I thought that was so fun. So Valentine's Day is around the corner, and I could definitely get a bunch of concepts about nomological, ontological things from all of my smart Vervaeke friends that are very masculine and maybe not the most artistic. Um, or I could just talk to a person about these things and I think have a lovely time and yeah, just catch up because, like I said, I really enjoyed talking to you last time and I was wondering what you've been up to. So
I'm glad I don't have to talk about nomological and ontological.
I know, I know. Well, you are kind of an intellectual though, I would say. Like how do you view yourself within intellectual internet stuff?
Well, I hope I'm never called an intellectual. Let's put it that way. I do like using my brain, and I'm very interested in many things. So I'm very curious. So I'm always stuffing stuff into my head, which is not necessarily good because then that doesn't always leave the room that I need in there for the things that are really important in life, right? But I love thinking about ideas and concepts. And so I guess in a lot of ways, my tendency is to be a very abstract person because I'm always thinking about ideas. And I have to remind myself to come back to earth and be a real person
Huh.
and to try to be a servant and to care for the people that are around me rather than just getting all lost in all these ideas all the time.
Yeah, it's funny how even art can pull you away from reality and relationships. And I'm an organizational psychologist a little bit, and I was looking at this task description for jobs board. And there's types of writers that are very extroverted, and the descriptions say that. And then there's types of writers and artists that are very introverted. And I thought that was interesting because if I ever teach someone and say like, "Oh, you're really extroverted," I might say something slightly different if they want to be creative than if they're very introverted. And it's kind of cool that creativity can do that. And it was kind of an aha for me a little bit because I didn't really think of artists as that introverted because they're so shocking and vivid and like they grab your attention. And so it was kind of fun to think that. And yeah, I mean, so love and art and ideas. Yeah, go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, I fall somewhere between introverted and extroverted on the spectrum, I
Mm,
think.
yeah, me
Um,
too.
I I can do well in a crowd of people. I mean, it doesn't bother me and I enjoy being with people, but then I need a lot of time by myself. And that's one thing that doing art provides is to have that time by yourself and to think and process while you're doing the art, right?
Well, that's what's so nice. Yeah, because another thing I've been learning is like I don't want to just project my ideas onto the world all the time, but I can make art and really just enjoy the process and then sometimes also shit. And it kind of does that in a way that like fulfills my introversion and my extroversion without me like preaching and having to have a message on social media and all that stuff, which frankly terrifies me a little bit. As I get a little older and more self-aware, I worry that I'm not caring enough about other people's perspectives and want to kind of pull back and make sure that I'm not um, just a demagogue or something like that. I don't know. Do you ever feel like that when you're like managing your channel that you worry that you're getting too caught up in social media?
Well, I don't do any social media except YouTube. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have a very small Twitter presence,
Oh,
but I have
cool.
refined my Twitter list to just a very small list of people.
Hmm.
whose opinions I value,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and other people whose ideas I value. So it's very small list. So I never get blasted with political stuff or the culture war. I never get blasted with any
Hmm.
of that stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
I've been completely out of the fray for 3 or 4 years. I don't do
Oh,
Facebook, I
cool.
don't do Instagram, I don't do TikTok. I just because honestly, my YouTube channel requires so much time
Oh, yeah.
just to be prepared for things. I've taken kind of a hiatus since Christmas,
Oh,
and
cool.
there's a part of me that's thinking I kind of like just being able to relax and not always be stuffing my brain with things and trying to be ready for something the next day. So
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
part
Well, that's
of
why I
me
want
thinks
this
I'm
interview
going
to
to
be
cut
too,
way back.
because yeah, the dread of wanting to do your best, and really, it's not. It's important to do your best when you're using someone's time like that, a stranger,
Mhm.
and they're generously coming in and
Exactly.
discussing things. So I want to do my best too and be really prepared. And it's weird because like YouTube rewards consistency, but
Mhm.
consistency like kind of motivates people to feel burnout and stuff like that. And so I like more intermittent. Like if I feel really creative, I'll reach out to people. If I feel like it's like I have too much stuff to edit or care about, I like way pull back. And like a labor of love again to keep it on the love theme. And I even like almost your little Twitter image was like, oh, I just want what I love, the things I really care about, and
Yeah,
not the things that seem important or seem trendy. And um, yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Just the things I love.
that's cool. Are you a passionate person? Are you like do you love Valentine's Day dates and holding hands? Or are you like used to and gave that up, or never into that stuff?
Well, that's a very funny word. Passionate is a very funny
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Um, when my husband and I have been married for 31 years, and when we were early in our marriage, we were having some problems, and we went to talk to one of the pastors about it, and he said, "You are both very passionate people."
Uh-huh.
But what he meant by that was we're both very intense,
Yeah.
and we take things very seriously. Um,
I can
and
see that, at least with you. I've never met your husband, but yeah.
yeah, so it kind of surprised me when he used that word because I never thought of myself as a passionate person.
Mm.
When you think
Hmm.
passionate, you think, oh, these steamy love scenes in movies or something like that. But
That's
the
a type of
passion
passion,
really
yeah.
means that your emotions can be very strong. And I guess because I knew that about myself, I spent many years trying to learn how to control that aspect of myself. And
Mm.
when you do that, you can kind of clamp down and then you're no longer yourself. And so then I have to spend many years learning how to live with grace and not just trying to control myself, but to let myself be controlled by the spirit so that the real me can come out and play, but without doing harm either to myself or others. Because really strong passions you can take them out on somebody and you think you've released it, but you've really just transferred that harm to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. When I was kind of feeling like that when I was talking earlier, like if I want to project my desires into another person's life, I want that to be like a partnership. I want it to be dynamic. I want them to come into me. And even sometimes that's the hardest part is just being open to other people's feelings and let that love in and stuff like that. And then when you can kind of do that, all of a sudden you forget about all these anxious thoughts and these controlling things. Um, that's an amazing story. And has it helped your? I mean, you're still married. You sound like you have an awesome family.
We
Was
are,
it like a
we
good
are still
Kairos?
married.
Let's say.
But I mean, one of the difficult, what you just brought up about being open and letting it in and giving it out and all that. I think one of the really difficult things about marriage is we don't see ourselves very well. We can see the other person crystal clear. And we can especially see in the other person the things we don't like in ourselves. So when it pops up in the other person, we know very well that's a thing I don't like. but we don't recognize that it's a thing in myself that I don't like. I'm just projecting it onto the other person. Or if I have things in myself that I don't like, I'm blaming the other person for this thing that's in me. Because if I'm not self-aware of my own sin and my own blindness, then I'm going to project it all onto the other person. And so that can make communication very difficult because you want to speak into the other person's life and you think you're speaking with love and care and helpfulness, but you're really trying to be Holy Spirit to the other person, and you're putting a burden on them. And so it takes years to unwind that in a marriage, I think. Now, maybe not everybody deals with that. Some people probably have marriages where everything is smooth and hunky-dory, but if you take
Well,
two
and there's a host of problems and stuff
you
too.
take
Like,
two passionate people, and you take two strong-minded people, and you take two people who come from um, families of origin that were difficult and challenging,
yeah, yeah,
and you have a lot that you have to work through. But this morning I was listening to a message about abiding in the vine and what that word abide means. And what it actually means is to remain
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
long time. And I think what happens to so many marriages is that when things get hard and they get all tangled up and you can't get them untangled, that you walk away and you don't remain. But the grapes that grow on the vine grow sweeter and more complex with the struggle of the drought and the fiery storm and the torrential winds and all of that. So if you abide and you can work your way through those difficulties, then when the love does come back, it comes back at a much richer place than it was before. But it's this kind of leapfrogging thing where you have this rich love now that's come back, and then you go through another hard spot and you just think, this is it, it's over, we can never work our way through this. And then you work your way through that and you come up when my husband and I were dating, he used this illustration with me, and it's been very helpful to me ever since. When you're climbing a mountain, you have to stop every once in a while and catch your breath because it's a struggle. And you're always thinking, maybe I'm just going to go back down the mountain because it's too hard. But every time you get a little further up the mountain, the view is better. So if
Nice.
you
I like
keep
that.
going, you get to a better and better view.
Yeah, yeah. No, my mom and my dad worked through some hard times. My father was type 1 diabetic and went through losing his vision
Oh,
and all sorts of things. Yeah, well, my mom
mhm,
stood by him, and like the modern thing is to like move on and let
mhm,
go. And um, I really felt almost like a sense of reverence. And definitely, she's used the word admire and all these different things. And at really true times, she says how freaking hard it was and how
mhm,
in the like shadow of all of these problems in this person's life and all of this diversity and difficulty was happening. And but I love that because when you don't give up on something, uh, that makes it mean more, and you know more truth, and like when the other person's doing that too, of course, right? When they're both doing that, that's like the most unique thing. And like
mhm.
you said, those top parts, or when you're able to see the beauty from the mountain, you're like, oh, I know why I'm on this mountain. This makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and yeah, I just find that
But it
so
doesn't make the
yeah.
mountain any easier.
No, no, yeah, the difficulty and the struggle. Everyone wants an easy life these days, and everyone wants everything to be like one button or 5 seconds quicker or a little more luxury than I maybe had 10 years ago and thought was fine. And it's all of that kind of more, more, more. And I'm not saying go back to the Stone Age or anything like that, but it actually pulls us out of ourselves in a way that I think can be like almost neurotic and certainly like I think we were saying like pulling back a little bit and saying, okay, well, I want my social media to be small. I don't know if I want to work on my YouTube hobby all the time and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Then uh, yeah, there's like a breath, and there's strength comes from breaks and stuff. So yeah, I think that that kind of like old fashioned view of love and of relationships, I find really attractive. And even in my adult friends, I like knowing that they're not perfect, and I like that they know that they've seen me at lows, and that we've kind of been through that, and that we're together because we really have fun together or whatever reason. But the depth of adult relationships is a little different than the kind of like the blind love of youth, where all your friends, like, you're willing to get rid of them so quickly, or they don't care about you as much as you care about them, or things like that.
Mhm.
um
Well, and you were saying earlier about art that you can get so into it that can become a distraction.
yeah, yeah,
So I remember many times when I haven't painted much in the last few years because of the YouTube channel. It takes up my time and my creative energy. But when I was really focusing on painting, there would be many times I'd be having a conversation with my husband, but in my mind, I was trying to work through a problem that I had with a certain painting. So I'm thinking, what should I do with that corner? And could I adjust the color, or do I need to add more emphasis over there? Or, and he would look at me and he'd say, "Where are you?"
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're supposed to be focusing on each other and having a conversation. And I can find the same thing happen with the YouTube channel, like, well, who should I be contacting, and how do I work my way through this problem that I'm trying to articulate and I haven't found the words for it yet and everything. But over time, I've gotten a little better at reining myself back in and saying, okay, this is the time I'm spending with my sweetheart. I'm going to
Mhm.
listen to him, and I'm going to gain wisdom from him, and I'm going to enjoy his company, and I'm not going to, like, I think the scripture talks about redeeming the time. Redeeming the time. I mean, that means this time right here that I'm here. This is the time that I'm
Yeah,
given,
yeah,
and I need to redeem it. And part of the way that I redeem it is with my energy and my focus. And
yeah, yeah. Like, what we love and what we attend to and what we let go and ignore defines us, and we don't realize that sometimes, because I think about people a lot, and you don't even need to be able to describe someone if you just watch how much time they spend doing things and the quality of attention that they're giving to things. And like, I'm like you, if I'm really focused on work or some hobby that I've really been investing in, or some new or old friendship that I'm really caught up in, then sometimes uh my other relationships suffer, because I'm not then letting go of that to be with them, and I'm not, planning a really nice afternoon with them. I'm planning a new project that I'm working on and stuff like that. Or
mhm.
even just like, I don't know if you've ever done this, but as I get more into art, sometimes I'm just like up for 4 hours till midnight, and then I stop and I'm like, wait, shouldn't I have gone to bed so I can be a normal person tomorrow? And even that kind of little stuff can start
Yeah,
to pull me out of my, more human relationships.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So why not? I know that you were on my channel once, and you probably told me your whole story, but I've forgotten it because
Yeah,
my
yeah, of
brain's
course,
full of stuff.
of
But tell
course.
me a little bit about your relationships now. Like, are you married? Are you dating? Are you
No, no, yeah. So this is, I might edit this out, but so I'm single, and I just started kind of couples relationships kind of stuff to figure out how to like flirt again, is the way I emailed the
uh-huh,
person, because I quit dating when I was in my late 20s to focus on a PhD, and I was willing to go anywhere in the world, and I was probably half hiding from love, but maybe not, and didn't want to be in a relationship and ask someone to like move somewhere extreme. And actually 80% of the people that I was in graduate school that did that don't have partners that they were with. So I think that's
mhm,
pretty unhealthy to say, I want a PhD and I'm going to date you and just pull you along. So I took a long time off of that, and lived kind of in the middle of nowhere. So there weren't a lot of, and was just so busy with school. So there wasn't a lot of romantic even opportunity. Um, And now, like, I'm done with that, and I've done a bunch of other kind of self work and things like that, and flirted a little bit, and kept worrying that I was attracting people maybe a little too unconsciously that maybe weren't the healthiest for me or stuff like that. So now I'm just trying to again refigure out the earthliness, if you want to use the biblical language, and like, okay, the heavenly is great. Let's also make sure that there's goodness in my earthly life. Um, so
Yeah,
does
and
that answer your question?
how old are you now?
So I'm 43 right now,
Oh my
and
goodness, you look so
I
much younger.
know. Oh, wonderful. Good. Good. It's all the
I would
humor,
have
I
totally
think.
put you in your early 30s. So
Great. Well, good. Good. That's in my benefit as I rejoin the dating market and stuff. So I'll take that as a great
well, and
compliment.
I think you'll meet women that are more mature. I mean, we all grow
Oh
as we get
yeah.
older, right? And so I think that makes, in some ways, that makes dating easier because you're both a little bit more mature. The difficulty is that you also have both become very set in your ways. And
That's what my friend said as
yeah,
well.
when
Yeah.
my husband and I got married, um, he was 32 and I was, he was 33 and I was 44.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was 11 years older than him.
Huh.
But we were both old enough that we had established our lives. And so then you take these two completely separate lives and try to put them together.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like getting married when you're 21, that you're just
Right,
trying to
right.
figure things out together, right?
Yeah, my friend said it made perfect sense. Like when you're young, you're not as set and you grow together. But when
Hmm.
you're older, for whatever reason, you've got your preferences, your goals, you've done things, and all of that. You don't just throw that away and begin as two young people when you meet someone. You integrate that, and like you said, there's a kind of coolness because you can know someone quick when they really know themselves and have a real identity, unlike when they're maybe 15 or 20 or 25 and people are changing all the time. But you also can't expect as much openness and as much like, I don't know what the right word is, but that kind of youthfulness that you would have otherwise.
Well, I mean, I would still think you'd want to look for someone who was open because it's very hard to have a
Oh yeah,
relationship. I mean, they talk about two trees, if they come into relationship with each other, they're going to be bark to bark, right?
right, yeah, yeah,
In order to really relate, in order to really graft to each other, that bark has to be peeled off so that the union can happen. And I think it was Bill and Annabelle Gillum who did this series on marriage and relationship where they talked about the sandpaper principle.
oh please tell me that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the sandpaper principle is that God tends to put two people together who rub each other the wrong way in exactly the spots that need to be rubbed off. Because we all
Yeah,
have
yeah. Well,
spots that need to be rubbed off,
that's
right?
why I want to date, is I feel like I was actually not connecting to that part of myself. And I want to just dive in and make sure, okay, why am I so into philosophy and art and culture and say things that are people, but then not have a family? And I'm super into family too. I think my family, like I was saying, they had a lot of love. My grandparents never got divorced and are so loyal to each other and so just adorable. Um, so it was, again, it was kind of like these intellectual goals, these other things were in the way. And I also don't want to hurt someone. I don't want to like, move too fast or too slow or say things that I don't really believe because I'm trying to please people. There's a lot of um, the right part of yourself to share with people at the right moment is something almost foreign to me as I wonder about dating. I mean, do you appreciate that you don't have to date anymore in your life, or even think about that?
Well, before we go there, I want to go
Okay.
back to what you were just saying about we were talking about looking forward to having the rough spots rubbed off.
Hmm.
Um, the advantage of getting married is that we don't always know what our rough spots are. But when
Yeah.
we start interacting with this other person that we're stuck with for life, you very quickly find out that there's places that are getting rubbed off of you that feel very uncomfortable. And you're like, I don't want to lose that thing, right? But that thing is exactly what's hindering me and keeping me from uh, being healthy in my life and in my relationship. So
Mhm.
you don't realize where your rough spots are until you marry somebody who is poking at them,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's just the nature of making a commitment that you're not going to walk away, that you're going to end up exposing these sore
yeah,
spots in
yeah.
each other. It's just the nature of it.
Of
But
course, yeah, yeah. I don't think people are
it's a
perfect at
it's a
all.
blessed thing. Sometimes people say that when you marry, you first learn how selfish you are. But then when
Any
you have
relationship,
children,
yeah.
then you really find out how selfish you are, because you have no idea what it means to just give yourself completely to another who can't give anything back to you. That's what your mother was doing with your father. When he went through all those health challenges, he
Let's
could have.
not talk too much about my mom. Let's be careful about psychoanalyzing my poor mom. Yeah. Uh,
No, I'm not psychoanalyzing. I'm saying she had to sacrifice in that situation. Anybody who
yeah, yeah.
cares
They
for
both
somebody,
did. Yeah, they were
yeah,
both
yeah.
suffering and
And
sacrificing. Yeah.
so anytime that you have to give up something for another person,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
parent, you give up a lot for your children. There's a
Right.
sacrifice involved, but,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's so much blessing that comes out
Of
of that.
course.
And
Yeah, yeah.
we never recognize that at the moment. We don't recognize it until years later down the road, and then you can look back and you can go, oh, wow, that was so worth it, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's excellent. Yeah, no, I think again, people are afraid to get that close. That's part of why people don't get into deep relationships or give up on relationships is the closeness is terrifying, right? And I have friends too, again, that I see and I worry that I'm more like than I think, that aren't in relationships and that are I see as would be happier with a girlfriend. Or actually, even speaking about my female friends, a lot of them are dating less than they'd like or are single, which shocks me. Or yeah, just those kind of things. And it's really interesting to go like, no, I just want to be vulnerable. I just want to kind of connect with someone, see if it works, and go from there. And then maybe I'll still be lonely. That's maybe a good sign that this isn't the one. But if it is, if I'm really having fun all the time, like pour yourself into it, right? Like really give to the other person and see what making them happy is like, or being open to their ideas more than you might be with a friend or things like that. And I find it just, yeah, in Platonism, just to tie this to philosophy a little bit, like eros is beautiful. You're drawn out of yourself by eros. And it's not agape, right? Like if you're filled with eros, it's here to be more generous. But it's like this drawing out into partnership. What did you say? Like taking the bark off of two trees. Yeah, I love that.
Well, and when you just brought up philosophy again, and earlier you were talking about why is it that it's so much easier for us to think about philosophy and science and these things and play with these ideas than it is to actually be in relationship with people? And I think it's exactly the same principle with political stuff. It's easier to get all wrapped up in political stuff than it is to look at my own shortcomings, failures, sins, whatever,
No, no, no. Yeah, I
because
love it.
I can focus on, I've got this ideology, everything's nice and tidy, it all fits together. Now, philosophy is not quite so clean, because once you get a philosophy that's all kind of nicely together, another one comes in and says, well, what about that point? And then you've got to learn the next philosophy and then the next one. So you can always climb the hill with philosophy, but you can get all up in there and never have to face your own self.
Right, right. That's what I was worried about. And religion too, because you can be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. And you can have this amazing transcendent relationship with something that is beyond you and almost unwordable, and not be in connection with like the air around you and the like sensation on your feet and the like face of your partner and stuff like that, the actual details of the world. Um,
Well, I
and
was thinking
yeah,
about this passage in scripture
okay,
when
you can.
we're talking about love. And what I was reminded of is this verse in First John. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, because God is love. Now, you have to stop and think, what does this mean?
No, I was reading John this morning. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love this.
what is meant by love? So he goes on, 1 John 4:9, by this the love of God was revealed in us, that God sent his only son into the world so that we may live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son to be the propitiation for our sins. And this is the important part right here. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God remains in us and his love is perfected in us. By this we know that we remain in him and he in us, because he has given to us of his Spirit. We have seen and testified that the Father has sent the Son to be the Savior of the world. He goes on a little bit later and he says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love.
Oh, that's interesting. That's like addressing the Old Testament.
Yeah, we love because he first loved us. And then this is the important verse here, 1 John 4:20. If someone says, I love God, that's this heavenly minded thing, right? You have this great relationship with the transcendent God, and yet he hates his brother or sister, he is a liar. For the one who does not love his brother and sister whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this command we have from him, that the one who loves God must also love his brother and sister. Now, when my husband and I were
yeah.
pretty early in our marriage, I got to a place where I was just so angry with him that I'd go to bed at night and I would just lay on the very edge of the bed, facing away from him all night long
Yeah. My
because I
mom
was
holds
so
on to
angry.
revenge. She'll like stew and not talk about it. She'll just hold it. And it's like, yeah, I'm not a very high revenge oriented
So,
person, but
so we went and talked to this pastor about it, and he said, he looked at me and he said, how can you say that you love God if this person who's laying in bed next to you, you cannot love? If you cannot love and forgive him, how can you say that you love God? Well, I mean, that hits you right between the eyes. It's no longer just some concept that's in the Bible. This is a real human being that I am in relationship with, that I am called upon to love, no matter how hard it gets. Right?
no, I just want to sit with that in silence for just a second. I think that's profound, right? Because I agree, like not embodying your values and not embodying the highest principles you aspire to in your personal life, in your actions, in your relationships is yeah, I think I love Christianity almost exclusively because of this. It's hypocritical. Like they're so good at pointing out hypocrisy. And like you were saying earlier, like you have to pull the stick out of your eye and not worry so much about your neighbor and your lover and your children and
Mhm.
pull back into yourself and then try to love them. You know, Meister Eckhart, you ever read him at all? Some of the Christian
Just a
saints.
little bit here and there. I mean, I have had people on who've talked about him, so
Oh,
I know
cool.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
yeah. So
that.
Eckhart, I've read like practically every word of Eckhart, and he has these ideas that if you just get right inside, then you can flow regardless of your actions. And it's a very unprotestant kind of view because they're all about work and actions and outcomes and stuff. But I almost like the other way a little more. Like if I can just open up to goodness and then care about my mom or care about my students or care about my partner in theory or whatever, then I'm gonna be a part of something greater than me that's more beautiful because of my care and is impacting another person in ways that maybe neither of us understand. Like it's so profound. Maybe correct me if you think this is wrong, but that people can be struck by our love and our character in ways that we don't even notice. And so when you have that moment of kind of metanoia and then start to want to be kinder and more open to the world around you, um, yeah, I don't know what's better than that in some ways. That's why I find love way more than just romantic. I think it's a really profound thing.
Well, I mean, the scripture says that we're made in the image of God, and then the scripture tells us God is love.
Right. Well,
So,
that's the
right?
interesting part. Yeah.
So yeah, and then we are also told that we are a display case for God's glory. So yes, when
Mm.
we love the way Jesus calls us to love, when we will the good of the other, the way Jesus calls us to do, right? Then there is there's a glow about that that speaks to other people. We maybe we can't even see it ourselves, but
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people
Yeah. That's
might
what I'm
see it
saying. Yeah.
and they might be drawn to God because of it. Because
Mm.
if we're called to be a display case for His glory, display cases are best when they're kept with the glass polished.
Right. Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
The idea of even like preparing yourself for love or for church or for your job. It's really easy as I get older to be like, I know how to work. I know how to do that. I don't need to care anymore. And it's like, no, just bring your attention, your gentle, open attention into those parts of your life. And then all of a sudden, uh, radical transformation is possible and radical human connection is possible, which I think is so profound once your needs are taken care of, once you have like food and shelter and a little bit of like water and stuff like that. Um, that once we have those, dive into another relationship, or if you're not into romantic love or a partner, volunteering with groups that you like a lot, or even just taking care of yourself. I think is a kind of unselfish love sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, how can we know how to love one another if we don't know what love means in our own lives, right? And so I think it is important to take care of ourselves physically, to take care of ourselves spiritually, mentally, all those things. um, so that we can serve others, but also so that we know how to love another person because we've learned how to love ourselves.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that kind of the meaning of love your neighbor as yourself?
Yeah, because if you're like yeah, I think I like the eros and agape idea of like the more eros I'm given, it can be from outside or my past, my early childhood, or through doing things that fill me with love. Then I'm much more easy to uh, bring that out of me into the world rather than try and like force it when it doesn't even exist or something. So yeah, I think there is this. I like that you brought that up because it's making me think a lot more now of like, oh wow, just by taking care of little parts of my life, I'm actually like more apt for virtue in my interpersonal relationships and things like that.
Well, you know the verse that talks about the fruits of the spirit are love, joy, peace, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self-control. I missed one. There's one more.
Is that the
Um,
one you need to work on the most? I always forget like
Probably
the one that's important.
yeah, the one I should be working on is the one I forgot. But so love is a fruit of the spirit, um, which means that we love because he first loved us. So we can't really love at all without the love of God in us.
Yeah, yeah.
And I heard something interesting this morning in a different message that really struck me, and that was we're told that when Jesus is talking about himself being the vine, that we are to bear the fruit of the spirit. We always think that bearing the fruit of the spirit means producing fruit, but it doesn't mean producing. It bear means like to bear a burden, to carry
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
that it's
Very
given to
subtle.
us. It's a free gift from the
Right,
spirit.
right, right,
And
right.
then we must carry it. We must bear with it. Because it's not always easy. You
Yeah,
would think,
yeah.
oh, if I was just filled with love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, I'd be such a lovely person. But maybe if all those things are in me, they also need to be given out from me. And that means that parts of me have to be set aside in order to give this thing out instead of keeping it for myself
Yeah,
to
yeah.
openly share it. I
I
need
love
to
it.
give way with certain things. I need to let things get rubbed off of me. I need to let my inner self be opened up more and more and more by letting go
Yeah,
of
yeah.
my own desires more and more so that there's more room in me so that I can be filled up so that I can overflow. That's not um it's not a slam dunk.
No,
Sometimes
but
a
even
person might even think
personally,
of it as
that's
a burden.
yeah, yeah. Even personally, sometimes it's like I've been doing this thing too long. If I let it go, I would grow way more. Or I've been acting this certain way and it means a lot to me, but actually other things could mean the same amount that are newer that I might be needing to switch over. The idea of like um I'm the same always is even really not true. And this idea of like, okay, who am I gets in the way of connecting, of experiencing what is rather than what could be or should be or must be or things like that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
I mean, you often hear people say, I am who I am. Just get used to it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
but then that means you're not leaving yourself any room to become something more or something different. And I really like what you said earlier about um, wanting to have that new experience so that you can find out what it means to open yourself up or to become more vulnerable, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so maybe now there's some walls up and you recognize I don't want those walls. So how can I let those walls down so that I can be a more open person? But then that means that change is going to happen. So that means you're open to change, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you just say, take it, I am who I am, just take it or leave it. Well, then there's no opportunity for that kind of change to take place.
No, totally. And finding someone that's open to a relationship and being open to a relationship is really important for that whole process, totally. And yeah, I find it so interesting to like just go, okay, well, what is me? What do I make sure I do care about? Because I don't want to be so open that I forget about like really important things, but also some things that might have been important to me really centrally before, I might be able to let go because I was reading about depression the other day, and they were talking about how like people in relationships just aren't depressed in the same way that people in like the dynamic of when you're getting all of your social connection and interpersonal connection met, you don't need depression medicine and you don't need like these extreme like practices and therapies and things like that. And just it's a little kind of scary for someone that manages themselves with like little systems and that kind of stuff to go, oh wait, I just have to let go of everything and trust in this new relationship. But what happens to people when they do that, even if they're kind of like super antisocial, just to be a little crude with language. And then they start letting go of those little walls, those little bricks. I was imagining as you were talking about walls. And then all of a sudden they're like alive more and they have more skin tone color and they're smiling more and those kind of things. And it's really, um, yeah, it's almost humbling how much we can get just from really good relationships that we might be like filling a void almost with um, intellectual hobbies or trivial things and stuff like that. So I just, um, it's funny that like God is cheaper than anything. Love and people are cheaper than most things that you have to pay for in society. And like you said, if you're just willing to put in the work, be open to another person, those other little things, it's so amazing what being a person can be with other people. Like we're such a beautifully complex species that we see and are seen by each other, and that causes like cascading changes. If that's
Yeah.
not too poetic.
Because, well, we're built to be in relationship, right? That's what we're built for.
Much more
Either with one
succinct
other
than what I
person or with the
said.
community. Yeah. Um, I did want to say though, one of the things that Jordan Peterson says when he's talking about depression is that there's two different kinds of depression.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
nuance like this. Go ahead.
There is a depression that arises from circumstances. I don't have any
Huh.
friends. My job doesn't pay me enough to live an adequate life.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have an intimate relationship with another person. Um, I've I've got some interpersonal problems with my parents and my siblings. These kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things can produce a kind of a depression that if you fix those things in your life, you get out, you start getting exercise, you
Mm-hmm.
are developing relationships, you develop an intimate relationship, that kind of depression will lift if it's based on those circumstances.
Uh-huh.
There
Nice.
is also another kind of depression
Like chronic
that
depression or
can
something.
be a chronic or medical situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Sometimes it can even be caused by something like a tumor, or, there are kinds of depression that really are a chemical imbalance.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah. No, I've met
and
people
so
that
in
are like
those
chronically.
situations, I
Yeah.
think proper medication and therapy are important.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
once it starts to clear up, then a person may discover with some clarity,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, and then also I need relationships and friends and
It's both, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
like you definitely, I would call those
yeah,
like barriers to relationships if you have chemical disorders or
yeah.
just such high trauma or a lack of early formative experiences that you're almost like offline emotionally.
Yeah.
And so definitely, and again, that's why I'm open to that stuff. I think it's much smarter to get like therapy or join like a women's group or a men's group than do weird online stuff. I just see people like John Vervaeke, I love Jordan Peterson, I like, and it's great what those guys are doing. But is that distracting people from working on themselves? And is some of their advice, Jordan especially, he has like hot dog commercials and like prayer commercials within 3 minutes of each other on his videos. It's like, dude, what are you doing? I don't understand your message anymore. So yeah, I think it's so interesting to care about these things and wonder about them and like really dig in. That's what I like about you too, is you're such a, I can feel your care regardless of what you're saying, and just like watching you and like I mean I've never met your children, so maybe you're just like a horrible mother, but I never ever got one iota of a thought of that. And some that's what I like about you and people like you, because it's you're embodying what you care about and what you say, and whether, like you said earlier, even if you haven't got the right vocabulary and haven't read up all the books or whatever, and maybe that's a too much for all of us, maybe I like that you care about people and that you like, even in your
Also
art,
have
right?
to
Isn't some of your
remember,
art
you have to
about,
remember, I'm 75 years old. Okay. So
are you really?
yes.
No,
So
you're not.
yes. So that means that
Wow, you
I have,
look young. Holy moly.
well, I'm 75 years old. So that means I've lived through a lot of life, and I am thankfully no longer the person I was when my children were young. So I made a lot of mistakes when I was a mother. And there were times when I acted out of selfish ambition. There were times I acted out of ignorance. There were times I acted out of um, unwillingness to let go of my own stuff. So um, I think both my girls would say now I'm a good mother, but that's not to say that when they were children that I was like some supreme example of motherhood. My intention in my heart, I always thought I was loving them the way I ought to love them, but because our own lives are so complicated and twisted inside sometimes that what we think is love it can actually be, Jordan Peterson's devouring mother, it can be there can
Yeah.
be the tyrannical
Blind love and
father in me.
devouring
There can
love
be all
are
kinds of
real. Yeah.
things inside of me that could have impacted my children that if I could go back and unwind, I definitely would, right?
That
But
also is an act of love. Just to say that, I think, is actually shows again your character and your desires and stuff like that, which I get. Not every parent says that, and not every parent grows the way that is. And yeah, I just think it's cool. I don't know. I like mothers, and I live in Florida, surrounded by people that are also past their working life and their family raising life and stuff. And a lot of them don't smile as much as you. A lot of them aren't as open and vulnerable and stuff as you. So I think you're a lover. You're a smart person. You have a great mind, but I think there's a lot of love in you. Maybe that's what your pastor meant by passion is. I like it. I think it's wonderful. I wish there was more people um, just full of life and stuff. Maybe next time we could talk more about art. I wanted to bring that up, and I don't want to take all of your time. Um,
well, sure. I mean, if your time is up,
I've got like
that's
20
but
minutes.
I
I
I
figured,
have time. If you've got time, if you wanted to talk about art a little bit, I've got time to do that.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk for 15 minutes or so if you want. That'd be great. And yeah, how's art been for you? What's all of that been like? And
You mean just in general or recently or
um,
what? Can you
either,
tell me a little
but
bit about what kind of art you do so I have an idea of what our category is that we're thinking about?
yeah, yeah. So I do a lot of different art. I like things from like origami and drawing, very like hands kind of stuff. I do photography. I like video editing, like this YouTube stuff. If you ever watch one of my videos, they're like weirdly edited and hopefully getting slowly better over time. Like, so I'm very open to different arts and yeah, I like drawing a lot. I'd say for probably the last 20 years, even maybe longer than that, I've bought like drawing books. And just yesterday, I was at Office Depot and I bought some pens and markers and some new notepads and stuff. So if you had to box me in, I would say like maybe drawing, and I'm really into like video and animation and stuff lately.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you have when you talk about art, you're talking about a broad category of exercising creative impulse
Yeah, yeah.
and trying to find a way to communicate through that creativity, right?
Yeah, yeah, like I'll
And
I'll draw in the sand and like that's interesting to me.
so for me, the way that my artwork developed over the years, I started out by taking classes, watercolor classes from a community education class. And after a few years, I realized that I wanted something more than just trying to copy a picture. And so
Hmm.
I started moving into what I would call, I've never found a good description of it. There are all these descriptions that they use about art, like non-objective and abstract and semi-abstract and all that. But
Uh-huh.
I would say that my work is conceptual. So
Hmm.
I'm not afraid to make a picture of something that is real,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
trying to say something more than just what the image would say if it was a photograph. Like a
Right,
lot
right.
of
There's a type of
photographers
art
will
that
find
suggests it.
more in the image. The photographer will actually open up another world to the image that they're taking on the
Yeah,
screen.
yeah. Yeah,
So
making emotions and thoughts from visual imagery or movement is
yeah,
mind-blowing to me. It's philosophical for sure.
yeah. So that's kind of what I have tried to do with my art is move into that space where part of it was because I was doing a lot of my painting. This may be TMI, but I was doing a lot of my painting when I was going through menopause. And during that time,
Okay.
I was also, my daughter was born when I was 46. So my second daughter was born when I was 46.
Yeah.
So I was going through that period, which made being a mother quite difficult. And also, you're 46 years old and you're talking to a toddler all the time.
Huh. My mom was
Was
38. Relate.
it was difficult for me to articulate um, what I was going through, what I was thinking, and so forth. So I found that with paint, I could articulate ideas better than I
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
And that was what got me into trying to develop a process that would produce this conceptual art. And so
Huh.
my process took the form of sort of fighting against chaos. This
Okay.
is
Say more,
probably
please.
this is probably 20 years ago, maybe, that I started this. And I discovered over time that if I just started with a white sheet of paper and started trying to create something on there, I had to be so intentional about every mark. But if I took a painting that didn't work and I turned it upside down and then I try to paint over it, now um, I'm not just trying to fill up a white page with marks, but I'm fighting against something else. And so this other thing that's underneath there, when I start painting on top of it, all sorts of new things show up. So every stroke opens up new patterns in the
You
image.
told me last time we talked, I've tried to do this a few times, that when you make a mistake, repeat it a couple times. Do you remember that? Or
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, that's such a clever thing because it felt almost Japanese to me that it was like they also have like if you break a dish, like fix it with gold and stuff like
Mhm.
that. The mistakes aren't things to be hated or avoided, and
Mhm.
I because then it makes you like play in something that like kind of caused the mistake and instead of avoiding it and starting over, and it creates this whole new organic pattern or something out of the mistake um yeah, so this process that you have of working with chaos and working with changes and things like that is yeah, it's so interesting. Do you
Well,
have
and that's why I just when I started hearing Jordan Peterson in the biblical lectures, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing with art for 20 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Totally makes sense to me, you know. You're finding the pattern in the noise, you're finding the pattern in the chaos, you're finding the treasures hidden in the darkness, and
Yeah.
it totally made sense to me.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, just my art is an attempt at finding treasure in darkness. And I like that art takes to use Vervaeke language, the combinatorial explosion,
Yes.
the manyness, and it actually simplifies it. A lot of my philosophical friends like to complexify language and go towards the noise. But like when you can pull it down into an image or
Mhm.
into like a small phrase, that's really beautiful. There's something like, oh, that was there. That could be there again. And it kind of, um, yeah, I love the way you think. Do you have other Jordan Peterson, like life lessons about art or?
Well, what he got me thinking about was for years I had been thinking, for 20 years I had been thinking about this aspect of the elements and principles of art and how they seem to describe the universe. And I always thought that's, well, of course, it makes sense that that's true because God created the universe and the universe is a work of art because God is the great artist. So, of course, the elements and principles of art would show up in the world around us. And but when I started listening to Jordan Peterson, I thought, well, maybe it also shows up in physics and mathematics and chemistry and all these things.
Right, right.
So then I started really working at that, trying to understand where these things were showing up in these different aspects of knowledge. And the key for me was to start thinking about when Jordan Peterson talks about, okay, you're at the threshold of the next moment, and you're facing a landscape of infinite possibility. How do you make the next step? How do you even know? You're looking at a field of infinite possibility. How do you find your way through that field? And the only way you can find your way through that field is to fix your focus on the highest good of which you can conceive. And then what you need to get across that field will come into your frame of reference and give you a path. Well,
Mm.
painting is like that, because the next moment, the next stroke, there's 256 million colors that you could choose from. There is there's unity, harmony, contrast, dominance, repetition, variation, gradation, balance. All those decisions have to be made, and each one of those are infinite contrasts, because balance can go all the way from 0 to 100, right? Anywhere along there. Repetition, you could do once, you could do 50,000 times. So every single one of these things is infinite. So when you go to make the next stroke, somehow your brain is able to choose from amongst that entire panoply of possibilities. And what you're doing actually is you're simplifying. There's this thing inside your head that has to be brought down to something that will fit on a two-dimensional flat surface and say the same thing that is in your mind.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a human endeavor. I think there's something helping a person to do that, because humanly speaking, we're not that good at honing things down. I mean, I know John Vervaeke talks about relevance realization.
No. But I hear you saying, like, cognitively, with our will, with a lot of our thoughts, that doesn't really do the creative act. And yeah, there's that's why I like art so much. Is there's a submission and a playfulness, and
Yeah,
it's
submission's a
very
great word.
participatory. And
Yeah,
what, I'm sorry?
submission is a great word for
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah. Other
yeah,
power. Yeah, you have to be like, wow, there's so much moreness.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And so finding your way through that field of infinite possibility, that's one of the things that makes art so exciting, I think. And that's why you almost have to get into a flow state, because if you let your intellect get all involved with that, and you're thinking, well, how much repetition should I use and how much balance? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're locked. You can't move forward at all. It becomes completely immobilizing. So the only way that you can move forward is to let all that go and just submit to the process. Let the process carry you forward. And then once in a while, you can step back and say, okay, I can see it's a little off balance here. What does it need? And
Hmm.
then you can go back in, and then you
Yeah, it's
step
this
a little bit
dialectic.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit later, you can say the rhythm is off. How can I adjust the rhythm a little bit? Or maybe there's too much blue. I can see it. You can't see it when you're working it, but when you step back, then you can
Right.
go, oh yeah, that's not quite what it should be. What can I do here? What can I add?
Yeah, my
So
friend Kevin. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say your intellect gets involved when you stop and take stock of where you're at. But when you're in the process, you can't let your intellect get involved.
Yeah, my friend Kevin, I was going to say, is an art teacher, and he tries to get his students to not criticize themselves when they start to get in the flow. But then he says, we'll use that later. We're going to use that later, but just not now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so interesting. And that's why I love what you were saying about principles, because if I can learn 5 or 10 principles about color or repetition, and then get into like an artistic flow state and try
Mhm.
to make something beautiful or have some idea and want to, get it onto the paper, then later I can like get a second opinion or revise or backtrack a little bit or something like that. But if you do too much of that in the creative moment, then you stop the creativity. You get this very like ugly, often like disjointed, kind of over top down thing. And yeah, I love that art can do that, because again, like there's almost nothing that correlates more with meaningfulness or like a high feeling of meaning in life than flow states. And I would say like relationships with flow states. If I could have 2 things or 3 or 4 things, like getting those 2 in would be really important. And yeah, that again, I love your story, because you did this not as like an excited young person, but as someone with that excitement and who used all of her effort and learning And I didn't even really know that it was like almost solving a life problem, or it was like opening up a new way to communicate for you at the time. I find that um, just, I don't know, like I'm in awe of it or something. It's really profound to hear. Because
Well,
I
I mean,
always think of this like I
since
need
then, I've
something.
run into a lot of other artists who say the same thing.
Huh.
So I'm not alone in this, that
Oh, wow.
there have been many times when I've painted something, especially when if I was in pain and I paint something and I'm not even sure what it is. And then afterwards, I look at it and then it starts to speak to me. Oh, it's telling me a story. And I've run into a lot of other artists who say that they can paint without recognizing what they're saying, but later on, the painting reveals itself to them. And there's something very mysterious in that, you know.
I love that. No, definitely, because we lose contact with our creative self. And part of like my journey the last few years has been going like, I used to love to write for no reason or read fiction for no reason. And then I got really serious and ended up doing things and lost touch with that. And uh, now I find art, like I was saying earlier, just so cool that it can. You've even blown my mind a little more now because I've thought about these things maybe peripherally, but I've never used it perfectly to like get rid of pain or show myself some pain I'm not dealing with. Um, yeah, it's like how can like some oil or pencil and some fabric or canvas and just time afford that. I just find that yeah, I'm speechless a little bit just thinking about it.
Would we could pause it here for a second and I could bring up a file that has some of those paintings in it if you'd be interested in
I
seeing
have
them.
that meeting that I said I just realized
Oh, okay.
yesterday, so I have
Okay.
to go in
Maybe
a couple minutes.
we can do
But
another time then when we can share
yeah, if
some.
you want to do this again, I
Yeah.
love all of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me again, what is your job?
So I teach and tutor various topics, and so like education, and I've done corporate training. I've been like an entrepreneur and a bunch of things as well.
You said
But
organizational.
I have a master's in organizational psychology,
Oh,
and
okay.
so in my role I do a lot of teaching, but I've done like hiring, training, all sorts of things.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Organizational psychology. I mean, that's very interesting. That's very
Oh, I
interesting.
studied at the #1 program. I was with NASA and like all, oh, it was amazing. And it's like this hidden thing that people don't know about. Um, but like, yeah, when people, so a lot of your guests, I can think of what they say in organizational terms and be
Uh-huh.
way less confused. It's much,
Uh-huh.
there's something very tactile and functional about organizational psychology that it can strip away the beauty. I think like I study meaningfulness a lot more than the field does when I was there, but um, yeah, it's really kind of cool to think in terms of like multi-level nested groups, and the difference between a team and a group is the team cares about the outcome and knows each other, and the group is like a shambling crowd or something. And so uh yeah, it's a fun thing I studied, and it affords a lot of understanding of other things. But
Well, the terrific thing about the way you describe that is because you have this frame of organizational psychology, it allows you to see other domains of knowledge
mhm.
clearly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my frame is the elements and principles of art. So when I listen to a physicist, even though I don't have any physics background, I can understand what they're saying because I'm looking through that frame. And when Jordan Peterson is talking psychology or John Vervaeke is talking cognitive science, even when they're going blah, 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 10 years ago, it wouldn't have made any sense to me. But now I have this frame. It makes perfect sense because I'm seeing it through that frame of the elements and principles of art. So I think that's an
Cool.
amazing thing.
Yeah, having art and psychology as meta frames is really cool because art is so principled yet abstract and free. And then you have like science and stuff like that that's very constrained, and everything's labeled and everything relates in some way. And it's like when you start to get more of them talking to each other, and what I'm learning with art, like if I can express a psychological idea I read about in a painting, I have a new way of appreciating it. If I can,
Yeah.
I've never even done this, but now that I'm thinking, like, maybe I should be working through some of Peterson's ideas or whoever's artistically and seeing what it shows me, because it's so powerful to have deep learning about something and then being able to like apply that to other things to like learn quicker or make contrasts that are more meaningful and stuff like that.
Let's talk about that in the future. It sounds really good.
Excellent, Karen. Thank you so much for this. And I'm going to skedaddle, but please keep in touch.
Will do. You have a great meeting.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day, I should say.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye.